for Celadon out here at 33rd and Post Road on the city's east side. About 3,500 people work for Celadon, and all of them are wondering what's down the road this week. Trucks are coming home to Celadon's transit center, called back to Indy after last week's word of the indictments of two former top executives who allegedly defrauded the company and its shareholders of $60 million in stock value. By mid-afternoon, a trucker who didn't want her name used because she feared Celadon might back out on helping her, said at least 30 drivers were stranded in Indianapolis.
All of a sudden, their gas cards and stuff weren't working. They got them back on, but now they're not working again. People are stranded. There's people that are broke down that on the side of the road. Some of them didn't have enough gas. Some of them were told that they could put gas in it out of their own pocket.
Celadon has about 2,700 trucks that run from Canada to Mexico, and
oh my goodness, y'all. It has been quite a week. Today we're going to be looking into the Celadon trucking scandal and the bankruptcy that happened just this week. Unless you're watching or listening to this in the future, then it didn't happen just this week. It happened at some point in time, December 2019. I hope I'm around that long for you guys to be watching past videos. Also, thank you so much. Welcome to Thought Crime via podcast, Keto and Crime on YouTube, Keto Comic on BitChute. And do me a favor, guys. Crush that like button. Leave a comment. Anything to get me into the YouTube and BitChute algorithm. That way, more people get to see these videos. You are more likely to get notified when they drop. If you're listening via podcast, do me a favor. Go to anchor.fm, search Thought Crime. Leave me a voice message that I'll probably play on the air. I would love to have you guys. I really love to know what you guys think, because I want to do cases. I want to do things that you guys want to hear. I just don't want to choose things that I like and then you guys not enjoy them, because I'm doing this for everyone's enjoyment, not just my own. So that really helps me out. Thank you so much. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to be putting a link to a Facebook account, a Facebook group set up for stranded Celadon drivers and drivers, former Celadon drivers, to help get new jobs. If you don't mind giving that a share around on your Facebook, if you're so inclined to reach out to one of the many people on those Facebook groups that are trying to help stranded drivers get home, you want to help out by donating a little bit of money, do that directly with them. And I really want to help these drivers. I really think it's important to keep these trucking companies that are pulling this crap. There's been, a couple this year that's already done this. We need to keep this out there in the media so they won't be so inclined to continue to do this. So this is very important to me. Like I said, my dad was a trucker for many years, kind of a family thing. So let's jump right into the case. All right. Celadon Group, or Celadon Trucking, more specifically as we're talking about, was started in 1985 in Indianapolis, Indiana by two former New York cab drivers, Stephen Russell and Lee Bennett. Stephen Russell had an affinity for the trucking business. He loved transportation. He loved everything encompassing it. So his focus for starting this was really with the trucking part of it. They started it with one flatbed truck and grew it into a top 10 carrier that it is today. It's one of the biggest trucking companies out there, and this will go down in history as the largest trucking bankruptcy in the country so far. Lee Bennett, on the other hand, was more interested in the logistics side. And if you don't know what that is, that's the shipping, the tracking, the storage of things that are shipped via truck or freight, airline, and train. So he was more interested in that part of it. And the two came together under an agreement that would allow them to grow Celadon as a huge logistics and trucking company. And for a long time it worked. It worked very well for them up into about 1996, when the two started to have a little bit of friction as to how the new direction for the company, where it should actually go. At that time, they had purchased a struggling logistics company in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and renamed it Celsior. It was a huge hub for all shipping around Central and South America, Mexico, and it enabled Celadon to expand their operations from the United States and Canada down into Mexico and Latin America. And it was a huge boon. It allowed them to open smaller trucking companies in those areas and really expand their reach on this whole side of on the whole Western Hemisphere. And as a result, there was a little bit of friction because the logistics, which handled not only shipping for their trucking companies, but shipping for other trucking companies as well as airline and train, there began to be a little bit of friction between Russell and Bennett on the new direction of the company. And as a result, the two split in 1996. Basically, Russell bought Bennett out for about $11 a share, and bear in mind, Bennett was the money of the operation. He owned about 900,000 shares of Celadon, the Celadon Group at that time. So it was a pretty penny for Stephen to buy him out. But he bought him out, and as part of their agreement, Stephen Russell took most of the group, leaving Lee Bennett with mainly just Celsior Logistics in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And that's what happened. It kind of split from Celadon, and he ran that one division of the company. Stephen Russell remained an active part of Celadon for the majority of his life. In 2001, he spearheaded the absorption of Burlington Motor Carriers in 2001 out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Burlington was a huge regional operation which kind of brought them more leg up in the Northeast. Celadon's very well known in the Southeast and Midwest and out West. There's lots of hubs around. There's even one in my hometown, near my hometown in Gadsden, Alabama, and we have a little town called Rainbow City, Alabama, and there is actually a Celadon hub there. So this is one that's very close to my heart, and they're all over the country. So buying out Burlington Motor Carriers really expanded their reach into the Northeast. And as a result, the company continued to grow. It became a leaser of trucks. It started doing, instead of company drivers, it started doing the lease operator system where it would buy trucks from leasing agents and from manufacturers and then turn around and lease them out to drivers that they would retain as independent contractors. It also started contracting out with owner operators and as well as having its own company drivers. It, based on its growing revenue, which spanned into the billions, it was able to secure lines of credit with many major banks. We're talking Bank of America, Chase, Citigroup, as well as some regional banks, and it had to the tune of well over $100 million in lines of credit that it could use to buy new trucks, outfit hubs, outfit its logistics warehouses, anything that it needed. Celadon could get because of the vision of Stephen Russell, who grew it to a giant. However, as we do, we get older, and Stephen Russell retired from the company in 2012, and in 2013, things started to kind of go wrong. Now, we're unaware of whether Stephen Russell knew about the fraud that was going on at Celadon, whether he was privy to it, whether he did anything to stop it, or whether he was just really just retired and had nothing to do with it. But he died in 2016 at the age of 77 from natural causes. We do not know if he knew about the fraud that probably started about a year after he retired. So I don't want to smear his good name. He had a long and illustrious career in trucking. Remember when we talked about Arrow? For those of you that didn't see that, I'll leave a link below. Arrow Trucking was very similar with this senior Peel Sticker, Mr. Peel Sticker, controlling it. So I think it was kind of that way with Celadon. As long as Mr. Russell, the original founder, was in charge, things went right. And then when he turned it over to other CEOs and other management, it kind of started to take a downturn, as it often happens. Let's continue. Now, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but in 2008, we had a little recession. Of course, I'm joking. Of course, you knew about that. The trucking industry has not really recovered from that. It's still shrunk from what it was prior to 2008. And in fact, it's been steadily declining since 2013. this is for a lot of reasons, new developments in driverless trucks, the emergence of what is known the third-party broker system, which is companies like Landstar, which are actually, they don't own any trucks, they don't own any drivers, they own trailers, and they contract out with people to run their loads, and then they turn around and sell those off to independent contracted drivers and companies. So you had the rise of that third-party broker system, and that started cutting out a lot of the major carriers, because lots of times businesses could turn to these third-party brokers and get a better rate with independent drivers than with going with a major transportation company like Celadon. So you had that. You also just have general shrinkage in manufacturing, what with the tariffs and things like that. A lot of manufacturing has moved overseas, so you have just a whole lot of shrinkage in the industry. Now, where that's going to go, we don't know, but around 2008, it started to affect everyone, and Celadon was not immune to that, and so it started to contract a little bit. Although Russell was able to keep it running, when he turned it over to his new officers, it was pretty evident that something was wrong. They couldn't keep it afloat as well as he had. Let's just put it that way. They weren't the masters of controlling costs and switching things around and knowing how to use credit to keep things afloat. So also, you had a lot of animosity between now, since they had expanded into Mexico and Latin America and even Canada. You had a lot of resentment between U.S. drivers and those drivers as to who would take the load. There was a lot of accusations that American drivers were being shut out for cheaper Latin American drivers and vice versa. So you had a lot of intercompany fighting, and all of this started to lead to the downfall of Celadon. Enter CEO Paul Will, CFO Bobby Peeble, and COO Eric Meek. They started to do some sketchy things. Remember all those lines of credit that Celadon had? Well, they put those in jeopardy by doing some kind of crazy things with their leasing part of their business. They owned a leasing company called Quality that leased trucks out to drivers. And what they were doing is they were applying for new loans for new trucks to lease out to people, and they started inflating the value of their older trucks. Now, 18-wheelers, unlike your normal car, truck, SUV, holds their value pretty well because they're a money-making machine. So they hold their value pretty well, that and construction equipment, things like that. Well, what they were doing is going in and altering audits and altering appraisals, altering invoices to inflate the value of well over 1,000 trucks so that they could turn around and use those as collateral for new loans from truck manufacturers and from banks. So that was number one. They also started selling trucks, trucks that had been turned in, company driver trucks. They turned around and started selling them to dealers and pocketing the money, even though they were supposed to turn them back over to Quality, their own privately owned leasing company, for them to turn back into the leaseholders. So they started like illegally selling off these trucks. They also started lying pretty much to their independent auditor, BKG, about their books. They were basically cooking their books just like WorldCom did, just like Enron did. They were basically inflating things on their P&L, inflating things on their reports, and turning those over to the auditors and lying to their auditors about where things were going. They were losing money on interest and losing contracts, so they were writing that off, putting it into shell companies, just like we've heard in many other of these schemes. So they were really doing just a good old-fashioned cook the books, lie to your auditors kind of scheme. The only problem here, whereas with Enron, WorldCom, where you had an auditor like Arthur Anderson that was on the take too, here you actually had honest auditors. And in 2016, the auditors started to be privy to all the shenanigans that were going on, and they started to notice these holes, and they turned around and reported it to federal authorities, including the Securities and Exchange Commission, because as you can imagine, the more profitable a company looks on paper, the more profitable its stock is, and Celadon's stock was soaring to all new highs on the stock exchange in New York on Wall Street. About January, February 2017, their auditor, BKD, went to COO Eric Meek and confronted him about what they considered falsified reports to, because when you're a public company, you have to release a certain amount of reports to the public that are, usually have to be posted on a website for people to look at so your investors aren't misled. So their auditor accused them in January, February, March of 2017 of their 2016 and previous audits going all the way back, or previous releases going all the way back to 2014, could not be relied upon because they were built on inflated numbers and lies to auditors. As a result, Eric Meek, COO, resigned, as well as the other officers we just talked about. They all resigned kind of in unison or were fired with full severance packages. You know how that goes. And in May of 2017, after Eric Meek's resignation because they could not come up with a good explanation or a way to fix it, BKD released that information to the SEC. And when that happened, it showed that their value was about half of what it had been reported from years 2014 to 2016 and the first half of 2017. So their stock on Wall Street plummeted to a low in early 2018 of about 41 cents a share. I believe now it's like 2 cents a share. I mean, if you want to buy some Celadon stock, buy it. Kidding. Don't do that. But, so as a result, not only did their stock price drop, and there was a massive sell-off, because that's what frightened investors do, all of their major bank lenders like Bank of America and Chase called in their $124 million in loans. Now, banks have that. Anytime you sign loan papers, there is a clause in there if it's determined you have a huge change in income or anything like that, they can call those notes in full and give you like 30, 60, 90 days to pay those off. So be sure you're reading that fine print whenever you sign papers. If you listen to Dave Ramsey, the financial guru, that's what happened to him. He was having some trouble way back when in his first bankruptcy, and all of his loans got called in, and that's what caused him to go bankrupt. It turned out to be a good thing for him because he's built an empire. Not so with Celadon. They got their loans called. They were able to renegotiate the terms based on their new papers, and that gave them an extension until July of 2019. But as you can imagine, all of this started the house of cards falling down. Not only were they in trouble just because of, gas prices, the recession, all of that stuff. Now consumer confidence is way down in them. So you started having their major contracts like Walmart, Lowe's, a lot of major retailers start to cancel their contracts and move them elsewhere. So you just had the overall company in a decline. They laid off some drivers. They shrunk benefits. They cut pay. They did everything that a normal company would do to try to stay afloat. It kind of hit in late 2018, where as punishment, the SEC delisted them from the New York Stock Exchange. They were worthless stocks, so they took them off the New York Stock Exchange, and they became a delisted public company. And when that happened, the SEC and FBI stepped in and basically charged Meek and the other officers we talked about with several counts of fraud, lying to auditors, and wire fraud. So you've got these major officers now, former officers, charged with crimes. Those trials are still pending. As soon as we know about those, I will come back and report on those. And as a result, the company tried to hang on, but as a result, December 2019, this month, this year, this week, if you're listening in December 2019, Celadon officially declared bankruptcy and entered Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection on and around December 9th, 2019. It has closed all operations. It did ask that its employees finish the runs that they were on. They did say, as of right now, for all the Facebook groups and stuff that I'm keeping track of, their gas cards were still working as of December 10th. I haven't checked it today, so be wary. And it officially laid off 4,500 employees, 2,500 of which were drivers. The other are corporate and warehouse employees. So the company is gone. And you have almost like an Arrow situation where they just suddenly cut off operations. The only thing that they did not do, that Arrow did, is violate the federal law that says you have to give at least 60 days notice. They did start to give notice, so it wasn't a surprise. The writing was on the wall. But it is sad that you had a long time, huge, Big Ten trucking company that's gone because of fraud. If it hadn't have been for the fraud, they could have limped through, just like a lot of big trucking companies have done, by tightening their belts and hanging on. And I don't know if you know, but trucking is in a steady decline for lots of reasons. Watch that, especially if you're thinking about going into the industry. It's still a great way to make a living, don't get me wrong, but any trucker will tell you they have to work twice as long and twice as hard and drive twice as many miles to make the same living they did 10 years ago. So it is harder to make a living. But as I said, in my description below, you'll find a link to a Facebook page that is full of people trying to help drivers that may be stranded because of because the gas cards may or may not be cut off. So if you want to help, or if you know, or you have a trucking company and you want to help these drivers get new jobs, even their dispatchers, office staff, there's going to be a lot of people looking for jobs in the Indianapolis and surrounding areas. So definitely, if you have the means, reach out and help those people. And that's the story of Celadon Trucking. I'll be back soon with another episode. I certainly hope you enjoyed this. If you did, smash that like button. Give me a like, give me a share, give me a comment, anything to get me in the algorithm. If you hate me, if you hate the way I look, give me a dislike. It's all the same. Just get me into the algorithm so that more people see this, and maybe we can get the word out and kind of help these drivers along. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Until next time, Keto Comic out.